Hi everyone, it's Karen Williams, the book mentor here from Librotas, and today I am delighted to be interviewing savvy Sarah. Now, Sarah Harvey, well, what can I say about you? You're a leadership coach, you're a business consultant, and you've been in business since 2003, I believe. Am I correct there?
Yeah, that's when I set up my own business. Yeah,
That sounds quite scary, doesn't it?
I
When
know,
we think
very.
back at how long ago we've been in business. So let me tell you a bit about Sarah. She had an extensive career in HR, and she began developing her Savvy Conversations concept, a street creds framework, a few years into being self-employed and running her own business. Now, this really forms the foundation for her book. I've got a copy here, Savvy
Yeah.
Conversations. And it really informs all the work she does with organisations around leadership, around coaching, around team development, and around mediation and so much more. So today in our interview, Sarah's going to be sharing her journey of writing her book, Savvy Conversations, and we'll be telling you a little bit more about the book and her journey. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's very exciting I'm always happy to talk about the book.
So let me start by asking you, tell us about your book and why you decided to write it when you decided to write it.
Yes. So where do we start? I suppose the inspiration for the book is all of that stuff that you said about my career in mediation, coaching, and HR, and the realization that it's all about the conversations that we have with one another. So we can have amazing strategies, we can have employee engagement strategies, change programs and what have you, but actually it's all about how we have conversations with each other on a day-to-day basis. So I'd been working with that concept since about 2013, and running workshops and leadership kind of events around this. And so, as you mentioned, the street creds kind of framework got developed, and I was really wanted to get that down into a book. I just felt I'd hit on something. I'd done a lot of research. I trained about 2,000 people, or coached around 2,000 people on it by that time. So I'd kind of tested it out and knew that it worked, and I really felt I wanted to put it into a framework that would be accessible for organisations, around the globe, really, so that either they would come on my programs or they would be able to buy the book. And I think that focus around writing the book further enhanced the framework as well. So that was an interesting kind of part of the process. But I mean, in terms of answering the question, wanting to get all of that expertise out into a kind of one document, I think was the driver. And so what I've tried to do is I've tried to set out on two levels, really. One is the kind of, for leaders and managers, what's the conversational culture that we need to create in terms of allowing people to be able to always say what they need to say in the right way at the right time. And then what's the practical tools that we need as an individual to actually do that? Because it's one thing saying, let's create that culture, but it's quite another thing to say, how do we actually do that? So I wanted to be able to pick up the strategic kind of side of it and also the very practical side of it.
And you do that very well, Sarah.
Thank you.
So I know that, like many people, you'd been thinking about writing a book for maybe a few years before you started writing it. What was the trigger that tipped you over that tipping point?
I have to acknowledge that I was coming up to a significant birthday, and that sort of was a focus in my mind on a personal level. I think it just became apparent that using the framework through the workshops over the kind of, I suppose it was about 6 years really by the time I actually sat down and started writing the book. I was really kind of conscious that if I had a book that I could use at the workshops actually it would just it would just highlight even further and embed the learning better for the people that I was working with. And obviously, you know, there was an element of, I mean, I'll talk about credibility in the book, so, you know, an element of building my own credibility too, and setting myself aside apart from everyone else who was perhaps doing some really great stuff, I'm sure, around how to have difficult conversations. But I saw this as something more than that. It's more than a book on how to have difficult conversations. And so I think in trying to set that out in the book, that's what I got to that point where I wanted to make sure I did that, really. Yeah.
I know when we started working together, which was January, gosh, where are we now? 2019, wasn't it, last year? Yeah. And I know you wanted to have your book launch party on your significant birthday +1.
Yes.
Which you did in January 2020.
Yes, exactly. And that, you know, that was really key actually, because, you know, having that date in mind and finally committing to that date, so it's like, right, I'm going to do it in this year. And in order to do that, I'm going to set this date. The party will be then.
And it did. It happened on your birthday.
Yeah, it was great. I'm not sure I would advise necessarily people to organise a book launch on their birthday. I'm not sure the lead up to it I enjoyed quite as much as I might have done, but the actual party was fabulous, of course, and it, you know, the culmination of a year's work. So. It was good. It was definitely good to have that date to work back to. I can't remember who was it that said start with the end in mind. I can't remember.
Stephen Covey, start with the end in mind. And it's something I mention a lot in my programs, and probably we've talked about over the years, over that time, because it's so important when you know when you want to launch it. And I know we worked on a plan to make it happen. So what do you need to do? When do you need to do it by, to actually make sure that date hits? Because, you know, I know we had a few tight deadlines, and I know towards the end it was a little bit stressful.
Yeah, which I guess is inevitable. You know, life gets in the way sometimes, and I think it does get a little bit stressful as you see everything come into fruition and you're so close, and yet, you know, sometimes there are hurdles that kind of seem to come out of nowhere, but yeah, that's okay. That's all part of the journey, I guess, and the learning that you get from it.
Wow, at least with my next question, Sarah, what would you think, looking back now, what were your biggest challenges on the journey?
Yeah, I think probably for me personally, there were probably 3 main ones, and they're all relating to just finding the time to write. And I know we talked about that every time we spoke, because obviously you're trying to write whilst you're running your business, so you know, that takes priority. And you know, you've got your coaching clients. I had coaching clients and training programs and all of those things going on. So carving out the time to write, it took me quite a long time, I think it's fair to say, to work out how I best wrote. And I think I probably tried about 4 or 5 different strategies for, you know, do I write for a couple of hours every day? Do I write for, you know, more than that, a day, a week? Do I try and do it in a block? And I think that was a real challenge for me. And then, of course, I mean, just to briefly mention the other challenges of life was, I was doing, I was in year 2 of a 6-year psychology degree, which I decided to take on. And then, you know, why not write a book at the same time? It wasn't necessarily the most sensible thing. Each of them helped each other, I think. But again, finding the time on top of the day job to write was challenging. And then, unfortunately, as it turned out, I had a couple of health issues as well along the way, 2 operations that I didn't know when they were going to happen. And that was the main problem, not so much the operations themselves, but it was sort of hanging over me the whole year. When am I going to get my appointment for this op and that op? And am I going to feel like writing before that, after that? So I think for me, those were the main challenges. And I have to say that, you know, that's really where it helped to have that plan and to be able to sort of stick to that. I know we could have changed it if we'd have needed to, but it was really good to have that focus of, well, okay, now what do we need to do to deliver that on time? Yeah.
So you said, Sarah, you tried many things when it came to writing, to finding time to write. And I was doing a webinar last week, actually, and I was asked that question, how do you find time to write? I know everybody's different. What did work for you to find time for writing?
Yeah, I think for me, what worked best was blocking out a whole week at a time in my diary. There's no doubt about it. I did it probably 3 times during the time. So, only three lots of 1 week blocks was what I really managed to carve out. And the rest of the time I was having to fit in writing around everything else. But I know I did my better work and got into the flow a bit better and freed my brain up to really delve into the book when I had a whole week where I didn't have any other commitments. So that for me worked. I know it wouldn't help work, I suppose, for everybody, but for me it allowed me to really get into things, really see how things were flowing or not flowing. If I was to ever do it again, then I would definitely do it in that way, and I would set that out in my plan at the start, I think.
Well, I remember over the last couple of days, I think, and we're early July now, and over the last couple of days I've seen your reminder come up from a year ago when you took yourself away to write, didn't you? And that had a huge impact, didn't it?
That was the best thing. I think that was the best decision I made, really. And that was exactly this time last year, this week it would have been. Took myself off to a lovely little cottage in Wales. And, whilst it seemed extravagant at the time to do that, to block out your diary and move things around so you could do that, but to actually go away somewhere else so you weren't having any other distractions, felt like a bit of a luxury, but actually that was definitely the best thing I could have done, because not only did it double the amount of word count that I'd been able to write up to that point, it's that immersing myself in it. And I covered the whole cottage with papers and research, and I was just really able to do it from morning till night, when I felt like it, and then have a nice break without any commitments. So yeah, for me, I would definitely do that again. And obviously, even maybe, I know you run writing retreats and things like that, and that feels to me like that's a good way to write a book. Yeah,
it's a good way, just as you say, just to immerse yourself in it for a period of time. When I wrote my 6th book last year, I did, as I did the same. I took myself away for a few days, and it was the best thing I did, because I prepared for it. And yeah, it just allows you to have that space where you're not going to be interrupted, and because you're investing in it. I don't know if you found this, Sarah, that you're probably more likely to do it because you know that it's an extravagance, so you want to make the most of it.
Definitely do. You don't want to be wasting your time. And I think I probably did put the TV on a couple of times just to chill out in the evening. Of course, you have to do that, yeah.
But
yeah, you're not going to kind of procrastinate. It is a way to get over procrastination, I think, if that's an issue. No, it was really good. And I think the same point around the commitment works the same for me about working with you and your team, because once you make the commitment to do that, you kind of take it more seriously somehow. And yes, you've got obviously the added benefit of having your team around you, but actually part of it, I think, is just that commitment to yourself. I'm taking myself seriously. I am writing this book, because you don't want to waste that opportunity.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on something you said earlier, Sarah, and that's in your introduction to the book. And one of the things, you developed your framework quite a while ago, and I remember when we met up for the day together, when we started planning out your book, I remember there's 2 things that came out of it. One, from that day particular, I remember you saying to me, I thought it'd be more complicated than that, because you already had your framework, and that was interesting. I don't know if you remember that. Obviously you do.
I do. Yeah, and actually that's a really good point, because that's one of the reasons why it's really good to work with someone like yourself, I think, because I don't think I'm somebody that is filled with self-doubt, and luckily I don't. I was confident in my framework, even though I did adapt it and developed it through the process. But actually, I hadn't written a book before. I didn't know what the structure should be. I had a vague idea, but I did absolutely think it would be more complex. And just having that kind of reassurance that actually you don't need to make it any more complicated than that. Use what you've got. It kind of gives you that reassurance that you're on the right track, and you can go and run with that then, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And the second thing I wanted to pick up is the fact that you did develop it. And I think one of the things I really loved about it, and I know, there were probably moments of stuckness, overwhelm, and things like that. But I remember, as you've already inferred, that, it gave you a deeper understanding of your own process by spending that time writing it and developing it further.
It did, and I think that's kind of two sides of a coin, really. On the one side, it was really positive because it helped me develop the framework into something that was far more robust and researched, and so the actual process of writing about it really helped. On the other side, it did get a bit frustrating at times. I frustrated myself because I then was like, oh, well, okay, so I've improved that now. Oh, what else can I improve? And I think you can go on. And I think, again, working with you just kind of made me go, okay, you don't have to rewrite the whole thing. You've just improved that, that's fine. And one of the things that really stands out for me about what some of the advice that you gave me was, you don't have to put it all in one book. You don't have to put everything you know in a single book. And that makes me smile when I remember that, because I think you kind of think, what else can I put in to justify what I'm saying? And actually what you've got is enough usually.
And there also has to be a time when you go, it's good enough, it's you have to let go of it, especially when you have got a tight deadline. You have to just say, right, it's enough, it's good enough, it's fine.
Yes, definitely.
And I know obviously you launched your book in the beginning of January, and I know things were normal back then, and obviously COVID-19 has hit, and the way we imagine 2020 to be and the way you imagine 2020 to be has probably changed hugely. So what's happened since you published it? What have been your biggest successes, or what impact has it made, bearing in mind I know things haven't quite gone to plan?
No, I think I added it up. I think I had 10 weeks between the launch and then when we had lockdown. So, but actually I did manage to get quite a lot done in that 10 weeks. So my plan was to very much get out and just talk about the book, obviously, and just go and do loads and loads of talks to people to reach out about it. And I did manage to get quite a few done in that time, which was great. And then obviously that plan had to change. But I think what's happened since then is there's been it's been really great to have got it done, because I've had a lot to talk about then. So we're doing stuff online, like we're doing now. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of articles for HR and training magazines. I've been able to do some podcasts. I've been a guest on a number of podcasts, which I don't genuinely think I would have been asked to do had I not got the book. I think it was definitely a door opener, and people do tend, I think, to take you more seriously. That, oh, you've got something to say because you've written this book. So that's been really helpful, I think. And it's been a good use of this time, really, is to do some of those things. So webinars, podcasts, article writing, and of course it's given me the content that I can use over and over again. And that, I don't mean that in a negative sense, but you've got a lot of content there that you can adapt for different audiences. And
absolutely, that's what it's all really about. Great. Definitely. Yeah. So you said you wrote the book to build your credibility. Do you feel it's done that?
I think it's starting to do that. Yeah, I still feel that it's early days, but I think it's definitely done that. I think as well is something about your own confidence. I think I was confident in my framework, but I'm now even more confident in the framework, because obviously people have read the book and they've said that they really loved it and they found it useful, and they like the framework and all of those things. So getting that positive feedback has been really good for confidence as well. And yeah, I think that credibility will grow over time, but I guess it takes some time, and you have to I think I've learned that you do need to kind of talk about the book for quite a long time.
Many years.
Yeah, to get it known, and get people kind of familiar with it, really, especially when you've got a framework, I think, that you're sort of introducing to people.
Yeah. And before I pressed record, we were talking about the second book that you wrote during lockdown, the ebook that you were asked to create. So that's obviously a credibility builder, being asked to write that ebook.
Yeah, that was really surprising, actually. That was about a week after lockdown, and an e-publishing platform contacted me and said, would you like to do this? We're looking for a book on homeworking, obviously current issue, so have you got time to do it quite quickly? And I thought, okay, yeah, why not? So I think maybe I would have said yes before I'd written the Savvy Conversations book, but I don't know, mate. I think I had the confidence in myself to know I could do it, and I could do it quite quickly, because it was only a smaller, shorter book. But even just approaching the research for that, I did it in a different way because of the learning from the work that I'd done with you. So I think I'm honing my skills, and particularly in terms of not thinking that I need to endlessly research something in order to write it down in a book. Yeah.
And you did write it quite quickly. What did you say to me earlier? 19,000 words in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think it was really condensed.
Yeah.
So I did the same thing. My diary was cleared for me, I guess,
yeah.
Because of lockdown. But day in, day out, just really was focused on writing it in the timescale, because they wanted it delivered. I think it was by the end of May. To publish it by the beginning of June. So it was a really quick turnaround. And they only actually wanted about 10 to 12,000 words, and there's me, I delivered 19,000 then. So but they liked it. They liked the structure of it because it's an A to Z, so it's really easy to read.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to take it anyway. So
good.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's a question I was going to ask you. Yeah, one of the things I was going to say, obviously, yes, we've all had to adapt over the last few months, and we were talking before going live, actually, in terms of, you've adapted in terms of, you've been, as you said, you've been doing your podcast, but you've been doing your coaching online, your training online, and things like that. So you have been able to adapt to the situation and obviously keep things going, even though things obviously are very different now and potentially in the future as well.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise, actually, to be able to do that. And actually, I think it would have been very easy to either panic or try and do something really radical, and I could have done either of those things. But actually, it's quite nice to just have got the book to ground me, so I've got that content, and then carry on with business as usual as much as possible, but just in a different way. So it's been really encouraging that people have still wanted workshops, they've still wanted coaching. Arguably now more than ever, we need to be having savvy conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's really great, actually, that it's on people's agenda, and how do we have those conversations now remotely? How do we do it online?
There's a whole other book, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're
how
all
to have savvy
to
conversations remotely. Yay!
Yeah, it's all there. It all works. Yeah.
So I know, Sarah, you've learned a lot on your journey. And what advice would you give to other people who are thinking about writing a book, or maybe they've started and they've not got to the end point yet?
Okay, I think I suppose. There's a few things, but briefly. So I mentioned already, start with the end in mind. I think that's really important. So definitely have an idea about when do you want to finish and get it published, and that just gives you focus when you're getting a bit overwhelmed. I think then the other thing I would say is to assemble your team, whatever that is. I think for me that was the difference between doing it last year and not writing it last year. It would have been really easy for me with everything else going on to put it off for another year, but because you know, I mean, I'm saying that grandly, assemble the team. Basically, you assembled the team. I just asked you to work with me. But, you know, having yourself and Sam and Louise and others to help and just spring into action in the right places, it was really key, I think. And then I suppose the other thing I would say is to listen to people's advice, but then do it your own way. Because I think there were a lot of people saying to me, oh, you need to just put the work in, you need to just write every day, you know. That didn't work for me. And if I'd have got hung up on that, then I might not have done it. So I think that would be a useful thing for people to bear in mind.
Really good piece of advice. Yeah.
And then finally, just try to enjoy the process.
Try to enjoy the process.
Well, I think mostly I enjoyed it. I think towards the end, funnily enough, well, at the beginning and the end, the middle bits I really enjoyed. I think the beginning, you kind of, well, I certainly was, oh, am I doing the right thing and what have you? And then you get into it, and then I think I really enjoyed it. And I even enjoyed the editing and the referencing, and all. I loved all of that, which I never thought I would enjoy that interaction with an editor in that kind of way. And I loved all the design stuff and the naming the book and all of that. Really enjoyed it. And then I think right at the end, when you've read your book so many times, you kind of get a little bit fed up with it, and you kind of go, okay, I just need to publish it now. But then I think you then fall back in love with it after it's been published.
Well, I think when you get people telling you how much they love the book, how much they benefited from the book, and you start seeing the reviews from people you don't know and people you know as well, I think there's just something satisfying about seeing it as it grows, as it develops, as you kind of, you know, you put it out there to the world.
Yes, yeah, it's good.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. So how can people find out more about your book?
Excellent. So the first place is my website. Simply, it's savvyconversations.co.uk. Obviously, the book is on Amazon. If you just search for Savvy Conversations, it should come up. And I'd love for people to connect with me either on LinkedIn. Shortcut is Savvy Sarah, and Twitter is at Savvy Sarah SPM.
And I think one of the things I just want to end with, Sarah, and one of the things that I love about your book is the alignment. You know, this is something that you've embodied for so many years. You put your heart and soul into the book, but it's everything you know, everything you teach. So it's totally aligned to your business. So people know you as Savvy Sarah. And I think that's one of the things I love about, you know, working with you, and that consistency and that message, which has been clear right from the very beginning, even though it may have been murky at times, it's really developed into something that is really a really sound framework.
Yeah. That's excellent. That's really good to hear, and I think I feel that too. So, and in every day now, that's how I feel. So that's good stuff.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Sarah.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you.